We went to the Goodville Church.
Last one we went to, it's
Oh,
been
we
many
met
years
at church.
ago.
I was on council.
One gal
She was our
that
interim,
used to
so.
do mine,
Yeah.
no, she didn't recognize him.
Thank you.
She didn't remember people. 15 years ago.
Now we know who the old people are.
Well, this is for the congregation. When you want to join, we can get you. Sure, Joanne.
Is that thing used?
Good morning.
My son is
Where the paint crosses Red Ball Creek flows into the lake bed. By Kena Island. Bend and over you can see the bay.
Super.
Thank you now for keeping this place up, because it's a real cost.
Yes, he was sick before I was.
Well, I could hear you yelling and screaming out on the porch.
Somebody said,
I'm not able to, but I can watch it now. I don't have to be so diligent taking notes because it's streaming and I can. Good morning. Yeah. Okay, it's about 7 minutes. Linda Jarman. Linda Jarman. Nice to meet you. I'm Cassie. I should go meet all the people that I don't know. Well, there were a few, and then sadly some, you know what it is, some people are big and other people are coming. Church you go to, oh, with Lori Plant. Yeah, she's even
I'm the one brave enough to serve community and service in the sermon, and I just did last one.
You can do the communion without being ordained?
Yes. Everyone is called.
Makes sense to me. I love to serve. I mean, I do, and as a deacon, I do it, but I understand.
Do the whole thing.
Elements.
Oh, we don't do, in fact, every Sunday is someone different. Usually it's me, because nobody's on top. Yeah, he serves the house.
Yeah, and we do the same thing. But consecrated fellowship is the thing they told me I'm really if there was an emergency. But so far that hasn't come up. Otherwise, pretty much I am the you too.
North of Madison.
Wonderful.
Nancy, you don't have to sit too far back. We're gonna break about the time. I bet you
No, no.
Just on Georgia.
When we used to go from Harrisburg to Camp Northway was not, you have to go up the thruway, get off, go through Glens Falls, Lake George, on the west side.
Good,
It was all hotels, and that's where their house was.
Where she was.
Stiglitz?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were there.
Loved it all.
He did, but it wasn't kind to and she went down where she went. Well, my grandmother was.
Good morning.
And Austin there, or not on there, not off there, but 2 months was a wealthy hotel and of course she started her big job. So the family has. She's not going to come back the same kid. She's so young and fresh.
I told you you can't date anybody older than 5. So she's down to be.
Oh, yeah, well, and also told her to stay away from Italian men. She wrote it, she was so and then she left me, she texted me, and she said, Grandma, I can't wait to get back and tell you everything, and all we could do was laugh, because you know she's done this.
Where's Linda White? I think she's bringing her son. There she is. She stopped me on my to make sure it was when Andy walks in, it's okay.
Oh, yeah, there you
The last minute appointment somewhere.
Oh, boy.
But
it's not fun. Yeah, I saw that. Good morning.
Good morning. I hope to have a lot of fun in the next couple of hours. There are absolutely no things that you can't say or no interruptions you can't cause. Questions are always right and proper. If you don't know me, my name is Michael. I used to be a pastor up in Door County, and I'm very excited about this book. If you don't have it, you need to buy it. It's written by a couple of sort of middle-aged women. They're both in the medical field, and they've done some traveling around the blue zones of the world, and they've also asked some very provocative questions of themselves, their past and their present. So, and this can be passed if you want to. I don't need it. These handouts are from the book, and yes, I know I broke every copyright rule in the business, but I didn't charge for them, and I'm giving them away, and I'm giving the book a big plug. So. About 30 years ago, oh no, longer than that, 40 years ago, I read a book written by a nurse, and the title of the book was Nobody Ever Died of Old Age. And it intrigued me when I saw it at a used bookstore. It's one of those things that probably stayed on the musty shelf for a long time. And I picked it up and I read it, and I was absolutely fascinated. It was a biography of her mother, who worked in a school cafeteria for the, 30 years, I suppose. And then she retired. And she went home. She sat in her living room. Her husband had died earlier. And watched television. And within a short period of time, she began to have a series of illnesses. And her daughter couldn't get her out of the habit that she had of just watching television. So I've been thinking about this for a long time, and then what is really interesting is 3 years ago, I was in Door County, my last day before I was going to return to Kansas City, and I was on my daily 2-mile walk and a 3-mile walk and run 2 miles. And I went down the main drag of Ephraim and up the hill, and then I went around and came back out onto the highway, and I was going down. And that's a steep incline. And I have done that same walk, running, I don't know how many times. So I'm halfway down the incline, and guess what? I was going too fast. I was daydreaming. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't thinking about what I was doing. So, brilliant Michael, you know what he did? I said, I'm 18, I can just run through this. So I sped up. Oh, wasn't that dumb? After I sped up, I realized I was going too fast. And then I thought, oh, all you have to do is tuck and roll. I looked at the highway, I looked at the gravel apron, and I looked at the soft ditch, and I said, I'll just tuck and roll into the ditch. I missed the ditch because I don't tuck like I once did, and I certainly don't roll like I once did, and I fractured my shoulder. Oh, it's the best thing that ever happened to me because it was a wake-up call. It taught me that I needed to look at what I was doing and pay attention. And sometimes we go through our daily lives and we don't pay attention. We don't pay attention to the singing birds. We don't pay attention to the way the weather looks. We don't pay attention to the people in our lives. So, that was a good thing for me. When I first drove in to Ephraim and the parsonage this year, I'd seen the pictures of the tree that I've known ever since I've been coming here. The big tree at the parsonage that fell down. And I had an absolute, unending reel of my relationship with that tree. My kids were little. They loved that tree. They'd hug the tree. They'd touch the tree. And my little son, who's now 45, he tried to climb the tree, and he'd fall. Anyway, that tree was a very important part of the parsonage. And if I had been here, I would have laid down in front of it so they couldn't cut it off and throw it away. But what I'm trying to get is, how do we pay attention in our daily lives to everything that's around us? It is so difficult because we get so busy and we get so distracted. And one of the things that we really get distracted with are these silly things. And they're helpful, and they save lives, and they do all kinds of things. But a few years ago, I was at a workshop on communication, and we had just had this wonderful lecture about how we communicate with each other, how we interpersonally relate to each other, and how we talk to one another. And we went out, and there was a little kind of a social area outside the hall, and there was a bar there, Lutheran clergy, that's, you know, you have to have a medicinal drink. And I looked up, and there were 6 young people. I was probably in my 50s then, 40s. They were sitting at the table. We had just come from a lecture, a brilliant lecture on how we talk to each other, how I can look into your eyes when I'm talking to you, how I can see who you really are. And then we're all sitting there with the phone. And I would bet $1,000 that they were texting each other. So, the first question in all this is, why do you do what you do? You ever think about that? You know, we all have had those wonderful experiences where we walk from the kitchen to the living room and we think we are going there to do something, and by the time we get there, we've forgotten what we were going to do. But why do we do what we do? I retired a few years ago, and I was doing some writing and doing some things I really enjoyed. But I realized one day that I was pretty bored. So I went back to work. I work 20 hours a week at a local church in Lawrence, Kansas. I work 35, but don't tell them that. Because I was looking for a purpose. I wanted to do something that was associated with purpose. I could have, very happily sat at my computer and written stories about growing up in northern Wisconsin in the 50s and all of that, and it sort of has a purpose. But I needed something that was different. I needed to answer the question, what am I really interested in? And what could I do to make that interest a reality? What does my community need? What could I be doing? And that's when I went back to work. Now, I must admit that I didn't go out on the job market. The senior pastor of one of the churches in Lawrence that I'd been attending called me and said, would you help us out for 20 hours a week for 6 months? That was 2 years ago. And what I do is I do pastoral care for the congregation. Something I love. Some people think I'm good at it. But purpose is so very important. We do what we do, sometimes just mindlessly. I remember when I was retired, I would be futzing with something. And soon, the whole morning was gone. And I said to myself, what have I done? What have I done? So, it is really important, I think, for you to ask, after the ends of all these handouts I gave you, there are a series of questions. And think about them. And one of the questions that I'm pretty sure is on the back of that one, I sometimes just think I know exactly what's on the sheets. Oh, yeah, and it is on there in a different way. Ask yourself, who needs your help? You know, we live in a world where a lot of people aren't asking that question, and my father was an 8th grade educated mill worker who died much sooner than he should have, in part because of his lifestyle and his smoking habit and all the rest. But one of the things that he taught me is you have to look around and see who needs your help. And every year, when I was beginning with age 12 until I graduated from high school, we washed and put up storm windows for 3 widows in the neighborhood. And this is the thing that Michael could never understand. At the end of summer, when we had to take the windows down, we had to wash them again. And we put them away, and then we washed them again before we put them out. My father was, anyway. But these 3 people, one of them even had a son in town who was not very caring. Who needs our help? And how many times when you're walking in this beautiful land of ours, do you see somebody who needs your help? The funny part of my shoulder story is I did not want any help. Cars started stopping. And I had just been in a conversation a couple days earlier about people from Chicago, the Door County nemesis. And all of the cars that stopped had Illinois license plates. None of them had Wisconsin license plates. But finally, a man appeared. He lived around the corner, just down at the bottom of the hill on Ephraim Hill. And he said, "You need an ambulance." And I said, "No, I don't need an ambulance." And then a young man pulled over his car, and he looked like a bodybuilder. He had some guns on him like you wouldn't believe. And I said, "You two guys just get me up on my feet and I'm going to walk home." And it's 1 mile from there back to the parsonage. And this guy who was a tax attorney from Chicago refused to let me walk alone. Think about that. How many times do you see someone who is alone, who needs your help? And one of the things that is absolutely phenomenal to me is the United States of America, and perhaps every culture in the Western Hemisphere. By the way, I had a college professor who, whenever he quoted himself, he went like this, which meant you didn't have to write it down or listen to it. So this is mine alone. But I think the United States and many places in the Western Hemisphere is absolutely misusing one of the greatest resources in our history. And that is the wisdom of a generation that is desperately in need of giving their legacy and their wisdom to the next generation. It's very, very important for me. One of the things that I'm doing is I've written a whole bunch of stories about growing up in Wisconsin in the 50s, in northwestern Wisconsin, and the town of Scandinavians and Scandinavians. And I've written those stories for my nieces and nephews, all of the cousins, and I distribute them so they know. I'm the oldest of the grandchildren. So I experienced grandparents in a way they didn't. Anyhow, what does your community need? And this is the thing that I think I am guilty of. In fact, I just convicted myself for not doing something I should have done not too long ago. When you think of it, do it. Absolutely no hesitation. Because every time I think of it and I don't do it, it bites me. Either something happens to a friend of mine, or there's another aspect of our relationship that doesn't get tended to. Okay, your turn. You want to riddle me with questions about purpose? Go ahead.
I'll offer the flip side. It's easier sometimes to help someone than there's also the flip side of asking for help.
Oh, yes.
I am very big. I can do it myself. And then I whine and moan and my mom brought this up one day. She said, "Why don't you just come out and ask for help?" Well, no, I'd rather whine until somebody gets so annoyed they finally help me. So you are giving the other person a gift by asking for help. So it's hard to receive, but ask for help.
Very, very, very difficult. That's, if I've got about 350 Achilles heels. Asking for help is one that I don't even think about doing most of the time. A quick story about my father, and when he was retired and getting older, they lived in this small house in a little town in northwestern Wisconsin, and they had a combination wood and electric stove in the kitchen because my bullheaded father had to build a fire every morning of his adult life to take the chill off. And it's 90 degrees outside, he's still making a fire. But we had to clean the stovepipes every year. And he was getting pretty unsteady. So I would drive up from Kansas City in the spring and the fall to help him do those chores. And in the fall, or in the spring rather, I'd clean out the stovepipes. And so I got there and I put the step stool next to the stove, and there was no stove fire in the wood side, and I'm about to get up there. And he looked at me and he said, "What the hell are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I didn't ask you up here to help me. I asked you up here to catch me if I fall." But there's a story for all of us in that. Sometimes we have to ask somebody to be there to catch us when we fall. Anybody else? And that's a perfect point. Go ahead.
How much damage did the enforced being away from people, COVID, how much damage did COVID do to the socialization of people?
Huge. Socialization is next on my list, I think. Yes, it is. Social isolation is perhaps the most insidious illness we have. You may or may not like the CDC, but they declared loneliness and social isolation epidemic in the United States a few years ago. And COVID contributed to that. But you know how easy it is when we get older to socially isolate ourselves? We don't want to do that. We don't want to go there. We don't want to, it's like not wanting to go to church, but it's more than that. Things that you normally would do. How many of you have been to the Piggly Wiggly in Sister Bay in September or late October when all the tourists go home? Have you been there? What do you see? 400 conversations of all the people who live here year-round who hadn't talked to each other since the spring because they were working. I think that's
What
incredible.
made it easier earlier in our lives or in the life of the country to communicate?
Okay.
What made it easier? I mean, why, are we really remembering it correctly? Was it that way? There were groups that came together that don't exist today?
I think the answer might be that we lived near our grandparents and our parents, and our children live all over the country.
But that's not the only connection then.
No, but when H. Stephen Glenn, who's a social psychologist, used to be think tank guy for the East Coast and West Coast, a brilliant guy. He did a workshop once, and the first thing he said at the workshop was 600 people. There were 599 teachers and one clergyman, me, because I thought that what he was talking about was important. And he pointed his finger at us like this, and he said, "You are the first generation who will raise your children without any on-the-job training because you don't live near your grandparents or your parents." I think that's, if you have grandchildren, I don't have any, but if you have any, I think it's a brilliant understanding, and I think if we work through some of the sociological and psychological reasons for that and start confronting that, we might be able to heal ourselves of a lot of that stuff. And one of the things that I think is real important is how much time do you spend with your children? How much time do you spend with your grandchildren if you're fortunate to have them, or fortunate enough to have children? My daughter is arriving in Door County on Thursday night, and I haven't seen her for a year and a half. Shame on me. She lives in Rhode Island, and I had a trip planned, and then the mess started with the airlines and the other things, so I put it off, and I will do it in September. And both of my kids live there. Go ahead, Michael.
Just opposite side of isolation. At the beginning of COVID, when I was on the Y board, they started, people didn't come to the Y anymore, both Ys in Door County. And the gal who was in charge of programming kept saying, oh my gosh, they're never going to come back, they're never going to come back. And they had programs that you could do on your iPad, on your television, things like that. And I said, no, don't worry. I said, at that point, I said, mankind is a social animal. They will come back. And actually, I was proven right, because once it was lifted, more people came back to the Y. Their attendance and their membership increased. And so opposite to what we've been hearing here. So I have faith that people, and I watch the groups that go to the Y, I go early in the morning, it's the same group, the same conversations. And half of it's working out and half of it's talking. So there is a group, you know, there is still. Now, today, social media, and that's the way you contact and interact with people, is a disaster as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and the whole brouhaha over AI and the effect of social media on our relationships and all of the rest, very, very, very difficult to sort that all through. But COVID in some parts of the country had an enormous effect on social isolation. And at the same time, because it was outdoors, at least in the Kansas City Metroplex, COVID saved the golf industry. I mean, they had more people playing golf than they've ever had before, and a whole generation of people who never thought of playing golf during COVID started playing golf. Well, I think that's an upside. So, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the commandments is to honor your father and your mother. And I think we live at a time when people don't adhere to that commandment as much as they used to. And I read something that said it's not just your father and your mother, it's honoring the traditions of your past. And I think we live in a world where we don't honor traditions as we once did.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Did you have something to?
One little thing, I know everyone's against social media, I understand that. But in my life, through COVID, I was able to get my paintings out into the world through social media. I was able to flood the market with something that was happy instead of something that was sad. And it turned not only my mission into displaying my paintings, but posting them so that others would maybe feel happy or give them something that would uplift them. So there was a little twinge there of positively.
Oh, I think social media is an incredible tool. Cell phones are an incredible tool, but not when they become a means to an end. If that's all you have in your relationship world, then you're in trouble. When I was still in Door County, there was a young person that I was worried about, concerned about, and would pop in every once in a while to see if they were still okay. And one morning I was on my way to Sturgeon Bay to make a hospital call, and I got a text from somebody who said, have you seen so-and-so? And I said, no, I haven't. And they said, well, they're not responsive, meaning that they didn't respond to cell phone or email or anything. So I turned around and ran up to their house. And this person was about to commit suicide. And I think that's one of the great things of our instant communication. We can connect with each other and keep track of each other and all of the rest. But we have to, it's always got to be a both-and world. If all you have is social media, it's not gonna work. I need, you know, Robin Williams in a very bad movie had a point in the movie where he was before the judge, and he said to the judge, "I'm addicted to my children. From the moment they were born until this moment, I can't live without them. I want to be with them all the time." And I think that's the social animal reality. We are social animals. But it's also easy for us to be fearful of and cut ourselves off from that kind of relationship. You know, one of the things that used to be a reality is the church was both the hub of religious education in the United States, but it was also the social hub. Dinner on the grounds, you know, the best fried chicken in the world, and pies that you could just, you know, never get over eating. We don't do that much anymore in churches. In some areas like Door County, we have a flavor of that, a little bit of that. But where I live, churches are dying left and right. We don't have that community base that was a means by which social isolation ended. You could go to church and it was a safe place to be, and people were nice to you. I took a hiatus from the church for a while, and I attended other churches. And I won't tell you where in Kansas City this was, but there's a place where there are a lot of really, really big, fancy churches. I went to a different one every week for about a month. Guess how many times I was spoken to? No, I know I'm a kind of reprobate person. But, I mean, you know, and some folks, you know, they say things like, well, you know, we can't bother the people who come to church on Sunday morning, we just have to leave them alone. Well, you don't have to. Just cut yourself off from interaction. I did I viewed a training film, long years ago than I want to think, but the last line of the training film by the guy who did the film was, when you meet someone who doesn't have a smile, give them one of yours. And I've thought of that 1,000 times. I mean, it's very important. One of the things that social isolation has as part of it is that loneliness leads to a lack of self-worth. And I'm sure when I was in Door County, I saw that in a lot of different places. But in the metroplex of Kansas City and in Lawrence, where I live, people who are alone have very negative feelings about themselves. And the whole issue of self-worth leads people to say things like, nobody loves me, or I'm not worth anything. And I remember feeling enormously guilty when I was at St. Paul Church in Judgeville. There was a single guy who lived maybe a quarter of a mile from the church, but the mailman said one day to me that mailbox is full. He hasn't picked up his mail in at least a week. And I did not do anything about that except check with the neighbors to see if they'd seen him. Then I got busy. 3 or 4 days later, someone found him. He died of natural causes. But he was dead in his house, and he'd probably been that way for at least 2 weeks. So you know, one of the things about social isolation that's really fun is try to get to know your neighbors. You know, the grumpy one who lives next door to you and who won't talk to you and all of that kind of stuff. You just go, hey, hi, how are ya? And duck. And duck.
Michael?
Go ahead.
Another question. How many times in the Bible are we told to not fear?
Oh,
Hundreds of times.
that's Jesus' big mission.
Right, and Jesus came and said, do not fear. And Jesus said, God loves you. And he said it over and over and over again. So why do people resist that message? Why don't they get it?
Well, we humans have a mean streak in us. And sometimes we're not very nice to each other. And when we're not nice to each other, it's pretty sad. One of the big movements in some places in metropolitan areas across the country is co-housing. And I know all of us would be uncomfortable as the dickens with that. But a lot of seniors who are alone find ways to move in to a facility that's designed, not a nursing home, not an assisted living place, but is designed to be a community with pods of apartments that are joined and a common kitchen and all of that kind of stuff, to give you a sense of relationship. And some places that's been very successful, and other places it's been a disaster. If you, one of the things that happens that is so important is that communities evolve regardless of our best efforts to keep them from developing or evolving. And when I lived in Door County, and I can't remember the Danny Peterson's restaurant in Ellison Bay, every morning at 5:30, there were 6 or 7 people who got together for coffee. Every morning. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the AC tap, there were 6 guys who sat at the bar every day at 3 o'clock, except Saturday and Sunday, because they didn't want to be around the tourists. I just, you know, in Kansas City, every McDonald's has a group of people that gather between 7 and 9 every morning to drink coffee. There's one near the church that I used to serve, and I wandered into that one day, and I learned a whole bunch of things about this group of people. They all came from the same apartment complex. And if one of them did not show up, the first job was to go to the phone and find out why. You know, there are all kinds of levels of social isolation. My beloved mother, who was the most opinionated, difficult woman in my hometown, because she had opinions on everything, every day for almost 25 years would go for a walk with a girl that she was in kindergarten with. Every day. until that woman could no longer walk and my mother went by herself. But that was their little niche of relationship and community, and it always amazed me. And the purpose part of that was Joanne and Polly became these kind of little legend in my hometown. You know what they did? Every spring, the city put these baskets of flowers in big flower pots, or put flowers in these flower pots. Every day, they would carry water. These two little old ladies. Sometimes they had to carry it a couple blocks if they couldn't find somebody with a friendly hose. And they were so proud of that they made those flowers bloom and blossom. Anyway, any more comments about Seychelles?
I was just going to say there is some movement in the country where some school systems have adopted grandparents in nursing homes where there's activities back and forth, and I think that's a good thing.
I'm sorry, I missed what they adopted.
Adopt a grandparent.
Ah, thank you.
And that's a great point. I have about 6 grandchildren, even though they're not mine. But I remember their birthdays and Christmas, and I saw 2 of them when I came up here on Friday or Saturday, and because I had uncles that did this with me all the time, I gave each of them a $20 bill with their parents did not know about. Yes! But everybody needs somebody who's just a little separated from the family. Everybody needs a safe place, a safe ear. My uncles were marvelous to me in all those kinds of things. Okay, that's enough. You're going to have Fanny fatigue here in a minute, so we can get up and. Did you make the coffee, or is it still percolating?
I need like 3 to 5 minutes. The coffee's done, but I need 3 minutes here.
Okay, go.
Let me tell you
Go ahead.
a good thing. I love Door County, this is my home. But I have 5 grandchildren, and they're all in the Boston area. So my son moved to this town that's as close to Door County as he could. It's 18 miles outside of Boston, called Sherburne. And that town built 24 apartments because the people in the town, it's a pretty well-to-do town, great school system, but it's very rural, orchards and horses and trails. The town owns 50% of the land, and there are trails throughout the whole thing. But they bought this property, this property was donated, they built these 24 apartments so that the people in the town, when they couldn't take their houses anymore and didn't want to leave, could move into these apartments and still be part of the community. And we've been blessed. There's 600 square feet, 1 bedroom. There's, it's really tiny, but there's 24 people that have a connection to the town in some way. And there was a list that is no longer allowed, but there was a list of people that were from the town got to be on the list first if they wanted to move into one of these. And then the next people on the list were if your children lived in the town, then you could be on the list and be a second tier as far as being on this list. And then it was open to the community. And when we went out there to be with our granddaughter, when she was born, I took care of her while they went back to work. And then they moved to this town, and we put our name on the list, and they said it was 8 years before you'd probably get an apartment. Well, then COVID came along, and there was an opening, and no one wanted to move during that time, and we said, okay, we'd happily do it. So we moved into this little community that is very caring, but everybody lives independently, but the town owns, that's our landlord. And it is wonderful to be 10 minutes from my 5 grandchildren. And I don't go to Florida in the winter, I go to Massachusetts.
Good for you.
But that town took the time, and the All the other towns have these council on agings, and they've got gyms and different kinds of facilities. Sherburne is too small. It doesn't have a council on aging building, but they did this for their seniors, and they kept their community together, and it's just a gift.
Well, I think one of the things that we need to do in our society is engage in a little Yankee ingenuity and think about alternatives to some of the structures we have now. I mean, you know, assisted living, continuum of care communities are not the only answer. There are some other ways that we can proceed to stay in relationship with each other and find a way to do all of the things that we need to do for our own survival. And community is just, you know, an incredibly important thing. And we find communities even where there isn't one. And I, as a member of a church for 50 plus years, one of the things that I bemoan about the church is we, for the last 20 years at least, have spent more time thinking about survival and more self-interest than we have about what we can do in our communities, for our communities, with the very first thing, and that is creating community on Sunday morning. I mean, sometimes it's just a travesty what we do on Sunday morning, because it's not geared to be relational at all. One more belligerent thing to say, and then you can, I should have put that in quotes. My first church in South Georgia in 1973, I didn't preach sermons. We had conversations. I introduced the gospel lesson for the day with maybe 3 or 4 sentences, and then we would talk about it for 15 minutes or 8 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever. And after a year, my church council called me in for a come to Jesus moment, and they said, "We hired you to preach, not to lead discussions. No more of those discussion formats." What I'm trying to do. A few years ago. Go ahead, there's coffee and some cookies, and you need to move around and do something, and before we go on to our next 2 things, and if there's anything you think I'm doing badly, please don't hesitate.
Clean up nicely. Out of the woods person says, here's a person story. And then when they feel that there's something they do with my son possible story. So just as I told you, they put my name on there and it's on over here. And I just love if something happens, fine. Something happens.
My children don't realize that.
That's why it takes me.
Yeah, sure. Well, they don't want to hear so weird.
The English language I want.
That's my new word.
I think
One that's pretty far away, and one that's got young kids, right, or younger. I mean, I get volunteers when they're there to help, or they say, you know, we'll come up and help you. And
Could you check your
she said, I'm okay now. I mean, there's things I know I can't do as well. I don't like going down the heights on my balances. Yeah, and that's fine, but that's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, good.
But they don't do the help when they're here, that's the problem.
It's a little different.
We tend to get cherries afterwards.
They want to be in our town.
So they feel like they shouldn't have to work.
Totally agree with that.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
No, I totally agree with that. So,
Did the ladies get here?
don't know. Well, they're not doing until around 11:30, I guess. They're just gonna be here for lunch.
At Pelletier.
Yeah, and then they're off and running, and I said, give me a heads up, and so I can make sure the house is ready for you guys. You know, a lot of it's weather dependent, on whether they have something on the porch beforehand, or they'll sit on the patio, or whatever.
By the way, this is on the paper.
Well, you just sound a little bit different.
I did.
Yeah, a little bit different.
But the new table.
It's different.
Okay, well, it's different. Okay.
It wasn't that I
No, it wasn't
was.
before, but
I actually like wood better than metal, but there is advantages of the metal as well. They're lighter. I think once you put them together, they don't have that shrinking, expanding thing where they, wood stuff tends to rock and whatever. These are more solid. Yeah, so far we really like it. If you're ever going to get to that point, let me know. I think I could probably resurrect it.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for your time. And still have another little bit.
Well, you know why?
Yeah, good.
Because you're,
13 years ago.
no, my puppy,
2 weeks, you married her.
my puppy needs
Yeah.
extra attention. And if
Miracle.
I,
You know.
I know, but I didn't have a choice. I've been trying to get a grooming appointment, but Molly's not well. She's got a heart infection. And she's eating this terrible food, and she needs to be groomed more than normal, because she's, it's a special, I mean, my whole life is tied around this dog right now, Molly's not well.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. And grooming and all that, you gotta have a baby probably.
No, I got one up here, and that's why I had to pick it up, because I've been working on it for 4 days
Felt like he
to get one up. I mean, dogs, my last dog.
I know there, Tad grew up with dogs, and I did
What
not
do
grow
you
up.
have?
I love dogs.
What kind of a job he does every
But we didn't have that blizzard, oh my God. We had a dog, we couldn't get out.
No,
She
no,
had a
you
dog.
couldn't.
Okay.
Well, Molly is a wonderful, sweet animal, but she's 16.
Oh.
And
She's getting on.
she's on, and she's very demanding.
Oh, she's very
It's like
demanding.
having a small child. And I'm getting a little too old for small child.
Yes,
For
absolutely.
small children.
That's why
Yeah,
mothering was meant for the young.
I think so.
Well, that's one of the things I was, I'm convinced that what we should do on Sunday morning for people who go to church is we need to have, once a month, everybody tell each other, a new person their stories, where they live, who they are, where they came from, what they did for a living. Because we have created these enclaves of just
And I was sitting near each other, okay. I couldn't believe what was happening. And it was so, unlike anything that I knew about him or that I never conversed before, and I thought, wow. Anyway,
we do need to tell each other our stories.
Oh, no, we used to.
It's lower back that goes into the legs.
Yeah, my sister has a lot of problems with walking and, well, in fact, they found that she has scoliosis and she has to carry it on her right shoe that's about an inch and a quarter. So she's in a lot of time. We just can't figure it out. That helps too. Yeah. Yeah,
I noticed it.
we got a new mattress at home, and 2 years ago, Amy said, oh, mattress on there, I slept downstairs. I think it's here, I sleep. So, I said, she didn't know mine was better than the one. And it seems to me, asphalt, it's like, it's a new mattress here. We didn't see no things so yet, so, but I don't know, anyone was up on it, you know, maybe 2 weeks after the year, and but anyway, so.
I went to Merlot.
You're, yeah, that's where I've always.
They're really,
They're wonderful, yeah, they are. This is her 50th summer.
is it really?
And the Amy's, yeah, Amy's 50th summer. She hasn't missed all of the summer.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there you go. You're proud. Recess is over. That's a good thing you got enough weight, you don't fly up with the roll.
How old are you? 79, going to be 80 in a month. You are out? Oh, okay. All right. How old are you? 83. I know that. All right, let's get it going. Present.
Well, they made the tower 3 times. So with a ramp now, you know.
A couple weeks ago, I had to preach, and I had to do the welcome at the service that I preached at. And after I did the welcome, we had another set of announcements and some other things by somebody else. And then I said, and now in this church, they passed the peace at the beginning of the service. And I said, now you're going to do the most important part of the service and the only part that everybody really enjoys. You're going to talk to each other and shake hands. So they did that for about 15 minutes. Fixed my wagon. The live stream was in a lot of trouble. I think this is perhaps for me one of the most difficult subjects. You all may know the name David Brooks. He just wrote a book in 2023 about how to get to know people. That's a brilliant book. Go ahead.
Yes, I really liked it.
Well, when he turned 60, he wrote a column, I think it must have been for the New York Times. And the opening line was, "Today I became invisible." And one of the things that is true about getting older is that there is a point at which in our lives people don't see you anymore. And in part that's because Madison Avenue has convinced everybody in the world that you have to be 20 and beautiful to be successful. But ageism is a factor. And Farley Ledgewood picked up on the David Brooks theme, and she described it this way. "When I turned 65, something strange happened. It wasn't a dramatic shift. No crisis, no major loss, no sudden decline in health. It was quieter than that. More subtle, almost imperceptible at first. I started to feel invisible." One of the things that I am just almost fanatical about is all of the differences that we've created in our society and all of the categories. If you're over 65, you can't do it anymore. If you're 55 years of age, you're not job eligible because you're too close to retirement. And our corporate model for success and understanding of self-worth has really done an awful lot of damage in our society. It is my absolute conviction that, picking up on what I said before, we're wasting an enormous amount of wisdom and ability and ideas. And you know, the Lutheran Church and I have always had a little tussle with each other because I don't like bishops and bishops don't like me. But what's interesting is that I know at least 10 clergy who are my age, who could mentor a 28-year-old guy or gal coming out of seminary and save them enormous stress and developmental angst. And nobody wants to use us. And you know, this is not sour grapes because I've never been part of the ecclesiastical power structure in the ELCA. I've never wanted to be, but I just don't understand why we're wasting all of this incredible resource because, excuse me, you made me eat those nuts.
Didn't know you were allergic.
Probably. But the problem is that we disappear. You know, as soon as we turn in our retirement papers, we disappear. We don't exist anymore. In fact, what's really funny is that since I retired, I have not gotten one mailing from my denomination in my region, in Kansas, which I think is funny. I don't have any ego left in all of that kind of stuff. But we disappear. And the other thing that's really upsetting to me is how we describe the genders. Listen. Men, as they age, are seasoned, distinguished, and experienced. You got that?
I think we're outnumbered here.
Women, as they age, are past their prime. They let themselves go. They're trying too hard. Have you heard that? I have. And it's a disaster. I mean, and the sad thing about the description of men as being distinguished and experienced and all that, nobody believes that. I recently just saw a couple of episodes of the Matlock reworking with the older woman as the attorney. Oh, that is so good. Because she absolutely doesn't care about any of the conventions that would make her seem invisible. And she's smart as a whip. You know, I spent a lot of time with folks who are in care facilities or in hospitals or that kind of thing. And what I really find to be almost, I'm going to scream every time they say it, but I'll call on someone and a family member will be there and they say, well, you know, she's still got her right mind. I mean, what do we put boxes around ourselves for? And ageism is just, you know, it is the source of this loneliness epidemic. And one of the things I think that is helpful is if we face up to aging and see it as a gift, not as something that is a negative. It is the easiest way in the world when things get harder for us to do, to allow ourselves rather, to stop doing them. I spent a year and a half, almost 2 years, in physical therapy. My doctors, doctors, oh Lord have mercy. They didn't want to do surgery on my shoulder because I was too old. And they didn't think I would do that much good. Well, I like that, sort of. And I don't have a lot of range of motion with this. But it doesn't hurt. And I can do almost anything I want, except when I go to put my pie tins away, it's not quite the same. You had your hand up?
No, I was just saying about how your arm, I have one that doesn't go away.
Put them on a lower shelf.
Yeah.
That's the easy way out. But that's right, and that's, you know, one of the things that is hard for us to do, and I'm going to pick on all the guys who are here. Change is difficult for everyone, but for men it's catastrophic. Archie Bunker did a great comedic routine once when he was getting ready for Meathead's wedding, and they were getting dressed, and they started arguing about which sock you put on first, the left foot or the right foot, and when you put your sport coat on or your suit coat on, is it left arm first or right arm first? Well, I'm a right arm first guy. Give me 20 minutes and some help and I can do it left arm for anything. Archie Bunker did it better than I did. But how do we adjust to change? And, you know, we live in a time, which as Charles Dickens said, the best of times and the worst of times, where change is accelerated at a pace beyond our ability to comprehend. All you have to do is How many times this month has your cell phone been updated? And every time they get an update, guess what? You have to redo everything in the phone or relearn it, because otherwise you can't make a phone call. My computer is always telling me, updates, updates. And then we have these devices in our homes that talk to us. The infamous Alexa. Brenda has an Alexa, and I'm convinced that Alexa is eavesdropping on everything.
They are.
They are? Oh no! One of the things that Farley Ledgewood does is she talks about a process, and I really find this to be wonderful. She talks about a process of embracing invisibility, and in the process learning how to be visible again. And you know, one of the things when you become invisible, it's more and more difficult to get people's attention for anything. You go to one of the 3 million or 4 million coffee shops on every street corner in America. Who gets to wait it on first? And if you're old like I am, you stand in line, and sometimes they don't even want to wait on you then. But can invisibility give us an opportunity and the courage to be seen again in a new way? You see, I think it is imperative for our generation to be courageous about what we know, what we've experienced, and most importantly, I think, in lines of what Mike was saying before, what can we hope for? Do we have that wellspring of hope within us because of our experience and the things we've done and the things we know, so that we can bring hope to people in the daily world, the daily life of our existence in 2026? Really important. I see so many kids who are hopeless. They've graduated from college, they can't get a job in their field, and they're struggling. That's why they all need a Dutch uncle who can slip them a $20 bill every once in a while. And, you know, this is, I guess I can say this.
No, go ahead.
Have you looked in a mirror lately?
Yeah, just never look down at the mirror.
An old woman has moved into our house, and I don't know who she is.
But it's interesting. When you look in the mirror, what do you see? And I think that's a very important question, because if you see someone who is different than you imagined them to be, or that you remembered them to be, or if their physical stature looks a little different, can you take a moment to see the person who might have raised some children, been successful at a job, had the courage to do all kinds of things in their communities in which they lived, cared about relatives, been good to their parents? I think we have to have eyes that can see the totality of who we are. You know, I'm not as old as some of you, I know that, but I'm going to turn 80 in a short time, and I'm supposed to have a birthday party because she keeps nagging me. But I don't feel 80. I don't know how 80 is supposed to feel, because I've never been there before.
It's only a number.
But
It's only a number.
yeah, but it's how how do we actually see ourselves? Can we go from invisibility to visibility, and in the process, can we see ourselves as the gifted human being that we are, that has much to share and much to do and many things to offer in our community? Oh, I just think it's so exciting. A couple more things. Farley Ledgewood says, when you're young, people look at you. And when you're older, people look through you. Think about that. The next time someone looks through you in a public place or a public space. And don't misunderstand me, that's not cruel, it's unintentional. It's what we've been programmed to think about the people we live with, work with. If you want, it's a cultural blind spot. But that does not have to define who we are. Brenda has a dog. Cutest dog. She's about this big, bullheaded, strong-willed.
That's why she chose you. I couldn't let it go.
Anyway, Brenda doesn't take her for walks as often as I do. But it's fun because I'm walking the dog and I meet somebody and they have a dog and we have that moment of the dogs have to sniff each other out and all that kind of stuff. And people looking at the dog and then they look at, oh, who's the old man with the dog? You don't have to be defined by that. You don't have to be defined by the looks we sometimes get. And I think all of us in our daily lives have to stand up for the gender-biased understanding that I read to you before. We abuse every one of the women in this room when we judge them differently than we judge men. And it makes me very angry. And one of the other things that Farley talks about, which I'm particularly fond of, in fact, somebody the other day after church on Sunday was giving me a hard time about, are you going to teach us how to age gracefully? There's nothing graceful about it. And I don't mean that to be cavalier or catty. Aging is hard work, but it's worth it, A, and B, it means that if we work at it, we can give back to our community, to our families, to our loved ones, but most importantly, to ourselves. The ability to do countless number of things we never thought we could do. I think what I'm trying to say is that aging doesn't have to be something that we suffer in silence. I think aging is something that we can experience and express in voices of joy. Now, and I know that's hard to hear sometimes, and hard to think about how you would do it. But it is the way I'll give you an example. the two full-time pastors at the church I now work at, we have a different work ethic. They're both in their 40s. And the church is a downtown church in Lawrence, Kansas, and it is 4.5 minutes from the hospital. So when someone's in the hospital, I get in the car and I go see them. My two colleagues are so proud when they call the people who are in the hospital and pray with them on the phone. Get the difference? And you see, that is what we have to offer. And when they are so proud and so smiling and so joyous about having called someone on the phone and prayed with them on the phone in the hospital, and I always say, gosh, I saw them yesterday, it was really a good visit. I don't criticize them.
You're just nudging.
But you see, that's one of the things we have to teach. That's what I have to teach.
If they're willing to listen.
Well, even if they're not. I mean, I think our obligation as elders in our elder society is to teach regardless. And you know, sometimes in families it's really difficult. Because you know, you have a headstrong daughter-in-law or a headstrong son-in-law or somebody who thinks they've got all the answers and they know everything. I was there once. You know, but when I fell and broke my shoulder, I had a bit of a wake-up call. I realized that I didn't have to do it that way anymore. Okay. Ledgewood says, but real grace isn't about pretending aging doesn't hurt. It's about facing it honestly. The physical decline, the loss, the loneliness, without losing your dignity or your curiosity for life. We live, you live. I now visit a place that was one of the most magnificent places in the United States. And the other morning I walked down to the water from the parsonage at 5 o'clock, and I was just absolutely overwhelmed once again by the beauty. I got a lilac sniff on my way. I watched the two fishermen who were beating everybody else to the punch. And you can't, if you could bottle that and distribute it, you could change the world. Because it's peaceful, it's fulfilling. It puts you back in touch and in rhythm with nature, which is a tremendous gift. Okay, you've had enough of this. I'm going to give you one more little thing, and maybe if I can find it. The fourth pillar of this, purpose, social isolation, ageism, is the fourth little sheet that says, a goal higher than joy. This is about a rabbi. Born in 1921. Had a lot of life. And what is wonderful about this is that he has not quit or started running away from who he is. read just a portion of it. It's on the second page. The old rabbi smiles again. His beaming countenance could brighten any dark room. So you're happy, Elizabeth says. You know, I have become happier later in life. And I will tell you why. I love people. I just love people. I enjoy getting to know people and exploring ideas with people. That's why I love teaching. It brings me into contact with people. I encourage everyone as they grow older to use your skills. My mother had lots of gifts, I suppose. She tolerated me for 18 years. Gift number one. She wasn't a really good cook, but she was a fantastic baker. And she would bake oatmeal raisin bread for the library bazaar every year. 8 loaves, and they sold for $30 each. And I grew up on that bread, and it's really good. But one of the other things she could do was she could make a rhubarb meringue pie, and the meringue on it was that high. It melted in your mouth. It restored your faith in everything. Raised Cain with my diabetes. But you see, that gave her joy. And one of the things I think we need to look for and to find as we get older is the joy in daily life. And this rabbi, who's 100 plus, I think he's 100 plus, he says, what if you don't think, what if you don't think you have any say when you're 70, 80, 90? I interject, thinking of a depressing article I recently read citing you will have made all of your life contributions by age 75. The author wanted to die before reaching 80. Think you don't have any skills when you're older or anything to offer? Of course you do, the rabbi said. Everybody develops skills during their lifetime. The point is to transmit them. You may have to look for opportunities. Sometimes you have to create the opportunities after you retire. But you can always draw upon your own experience to help others. I watched my mother teach my deceased wife how to make a rhubarb pie with meringue. And it was one of the most delightful things I ever saw my mother do. But she was transmitting something that she was passionate about, that she loved, and it gave her a great sense of fulfillment. You know, over the years, I've had a lot of folks give lots of money to the churches I served. But before they did, I always sat down with them and I would say the same thing. Don't give it to the church. I wasn't popular, that's why. Bishops didn't like me. Give to your passion. And I think as we get older, we have to give more of ourselves to our passions than ever before. And when we do, it makes a huge difference. And if we do something for someone else, it makes a huge difference. This is the last line from the little section on finding your joy. You want to know the secret to finding joy, says Josh, the rabbi? With the serenity I envied, he said, every day, I try to make life a little better for someone else, then the joy comes. That's enough. You guys go home, go have lunch, enjoy yourself. You now know nothing about aging, but we had a good time.
Thank you, Patty. Very nice. Huh?
Sociologists, psychologists,
I'm sorry?
Brenda kicks me in the
Everybody wants to say goodbye. Are you here for the summer?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No place I'd rather be than.
Yeah, summer's beautiful here, yeah, absolutely. Next 8 weeks.
Are you next to Jim?
Eggers?
Yes. If you went east.
Oh, you're on the block.
No, east, which means Spring Road.
Right.
Oh,
We're
okay.
in direct line with Jim.
Okay. Okay, we're two door, we're. Yeah. So you've got wild animals too.
We fight nature every day. Jerry Schwab.
Jerry Yeah.
My girl.
Oh, thank you.
Our daughters were named for all-wheel tires.
Oh, she's a sweet lady. You did a good job.
Yeah.
You did a great job. She's a very special person. Yeah. And she does great products.
Just an article.
Yes, it was last Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Nice picture.
Yeah.
Well, she's a very pretty woman. She is great. Inside and out, yeah. I know her well enough to be able to say that. Is she?
I see you huge face on your dog's occasion and I want to take her mic through.
But you gotta have, you gotta see other scenery.
Molly can do it still, which is really good. She's 16. Fortunately, she can make the trip. Yeah. She's,
That is still.
She's a nice daughter. Michael married us 13 years ago, so.
At St. Paul's?
Yeah. Funny, the United marriages, it's so required premarital counseling.
Oh, really?
So he came over one afternoon. Just not sure we were qualified.
well, yes, but he did tell us the secret.
Well, the only said, only one question, he said he had a good fight philosophy.
And if not,
Every day, you gotta learn how to fight. That was his point.
Well, what he was saying, you had to learn how to compromise.
Yeah.
Well, it gets a little trickier when you get old, just to get married, you're set in your ways. And you know all the answers.
No brains.
That's what we were gonna do. Thank you.
Thanks, you too. Who's gonna, as you know, you guys have always beautiful smiles. Scotty's not happy.
Well, I know, but see, no, it's.
We're doing all the
White outline and
some
everything.
stuff. Marty's, but it's a huge meeting. For a meeting or just?
Volunteer lunch.
Yeah.
Appreciation lunch, yeah.
You are now seven.
And then you got
You
Shepherd.
want to be.
Well, we're not giving you. Oh, 9 years. Thank you.
Yes, dear.
Mike, excellent.
Yeah. Your son,
Yeah, it's very interesting.
And it's just like, you know,
I saw one today.
trying to be with her.
not my Yeah, he usually teaches a class
And there's
this
also
year.
five.
Yeah, that's great.
No,
That's her secret.
I'm trying to get a building. And I couldn't afford it.
That's.
I think there's something safe.
Well, they are.
Oh, you do?
Well, my grandmother.
Oh, that's the same thing. Well, you know, I tried to swim. Have a kid.
Oh, they do navigate themselves pretty young.
Thank you, Michael.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
You
I need to
too.
stop the library.
I do copies.
Then do we want to go out?
Bible, it's like, no other Bible. If you look at a copy long enough, you're gonna fall in love with it.
That's my grandmother.
Wonderful life about
Love it,
it.
love it, years ago.
Yeah.
That's what it is, yeah.
Talking about just, there's something magical.
Yeah, there was some beautiful ones around the county right now.
And all the light pushes and.
Oh, yeah, a lot of.
And the nursery I went into was full of them. I don't know why, where did you come up with that?
She doesn't know what going is.
I know, I just, well,
If
I'm
you-
a black.
Well, they're a little more temperamental girls.
Oh, are they,
Yeah.
see, usually if somebody buys me a plant, it dies within a couple of days. I just,
Don't have the green thumb.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your upcoming 80th birthday. I got a friend in Florida, an older friend in Florida, he says 60 is the new 50 and 70 might be the new 60, but 80 is still 80.
Thanks a lot. I like that. 80 is still 80. That's it.
Have you been around the cyclical relationships on artificial intelligence? That just came
I
out.
glanced
It's
at
only
it.
45,000 words
I
long.
glanced at a summary of it.
It's talking so much about what you were talking about, is how we have to really understand who we are as human beings and what our purpose is, and it's not efficiency, and it's not productivity.
It's not raising money.
And it's not raising money and doing this, absolutely, so he's trying to start that conversation.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah, so,
I heard a comment,
Chicago boy.
I heard a comment that stuck with me. It was just like, are you living or are you waiting to die?
He got a PhD in Villanova in mathematics, so.
That's
He's
wonderful.
not as stupid as you would be.
Oh, no, he's not.
That's my problem.
Yeah.
Which means I have to teach myself to rest. I'll suck it in.
That's the one thing you have to learn, is to slow down. If you're used to just running.
My husband
Is
has
this your first visit to Door County?
No, this is
So Mary Ann Flanagan.
Okay, great. Yeah, beautiful.
It is, it
We
is.
spent 45 winters up here, so we go south in the winter.
We came up in one
one winter, it was almost Christmas.
Christmas is the whole time of the year.
Yeah.
For
2 days.
For 2 days.
Flowers.
Well, have a good visit.
Thank you, Bill.
Yep.
Okay. Go get the dog.
Okay.
Yep, it certainly is.